Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today in this week's live Thursdays at Noon community event. First, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples in the Williams Treaty area. We recognize the long history of First Nations and Métis people on this land and show respect to them today. We acknowledge our neighbors, the Watam Mohawks, and the First Nations of Moose Deer Point, Shawanaga, Wasauksing, Magnetawan, Henvey Inlet, Nipissing, and Doquis. Today, we're talking about real estate. What's your house worth now? Are you tempted to cash in on the bubble of all bubbles? And if so, where will you go? The real estate market is hot, hot, hot. And while some folks are making money, there may be a downside here. If you weren't already in the market, that may no longer be an option, and hard to find rental properties are beyond the budget of most residents. Are folks who have lived here for generations being priced out? And is the transformation of our area to GTA North unavoidable? And for a lot of folks, the most important question is it too late to get into this market? We have two experts here, and we're asking them to look into their crystal balls and give us a glimpse of the possible future. Today, we have our own Stephanie Folks, who has handled all of our real estate advertising for many years and has her fingers on the pulse of the market. And we have realtor Catherine Innes, who is a past president and long-serving board member of the Lakelands Association of Realtors. Hello, and thank you for joining us today. Stephanie.
Hello.
Would you like to introduce yourself to folks?
So my name is Stephanie Folks, and I've been with Metroland for, over 17 years, but I've been in the real estate side for the last 8 years. So I take care of the weekly real estate sections in Muskoka, Parry Sound, Almaguin, as well as all real estate concerning Parry Sound Life, Muskoka Life, and our online products. That's me in a nutshell.
And what's your impression of the market right now, Steph? Is it still hot, hot, hot?
Yes, in my opinion, it's very hot still. Our sections are a little bit smaller than normal, so I'm saying that based on the fact that listings are selling so quickly that there's no need to advertise them. And we're trying to push more of getting the realtors to brand themselves so that people that are coming into the market know who to talk to, know who our experts are here in Muskoka, Parry Sound, and in Almaguin. Because you'd much rather speak to somebody locally than have a Toronto or a Mississauga agent coming up and might not necessarily know all of the different things that happen here, especially in the cottage market where there's different with the shore allowances and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've noticed a very large difference for sure.
And speaking of experts, Catherine Innes, welcome today.
Thanks, Pamela. I am with Johnston and Daniel Real Estate, but pretty much have a view of the whole market based on working in it every day, and also the past president of the Lakelands Association. So I have access to numbers all across the area, and as I said, firsthand experience on what is happening here. And I was surprised to tally up that I have been in the business for 16 years now, and talk about time going fast. Wow. And hopefully I have learned something each of those years. It hasn't just been the first year over and over and over again. I like to think that I have a pretty good handle on the market. I think what Stephanie was saying is absolutely right. It's been very busy. The market is really hot, and we really like to emphasize using local realtors, which is, of course, as a local realtor, is in our best interest. But it's certainly in the buyer's best interest, and in terms of not overly and falsely inflating the market. I mean, we have access to all of the numbers, all of the past sales, and there's nothing like firsthand experience and actually being part of what is happening in the marketplace.
So, what, Catherine, is driving this market? What do you what is it? COVID? Is it all GTA buyers? What is your experience tell you?
A lot of GTA buyers, although there are people who have been in a position to cash out of the market, as well as you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
as the prices are so high. Some people, certainly with more than one property, have been able to take advantage of that. But the majority of our buyers are Golden Horseshoe. There are some international buyers, but it's a very small number. Golden Horseshoe, and there's a lot of liquidity in the market. Now, our son is the CEO of a credit union, so he's sort of my conduit to get overall financial, to get a picture, because part of disseminating information is also analyzing it. And you of all people, Pamela, would be aware of that you don't just sort of shoot information out to people. You help them understand what all of that means. And so my son was telling me that they don't expect much change until 2022. Because of COVID. I mean, things are going to depend on whether there's a fourth strong wave, the Delta variant, but Canada follows the US quite carefully, because if we don't, then it tends to mess up our currency and our value. So we're not about to raise the rates. The GDP is still down. The stock market's doing really well, but it's not the economy. We're not at full potential yet, so we expect more growth. And I think one of the reasons that there's two reasons I think that so many people are buying property here. One is emotional, because people were thinking, COVID, we don't have anywhere to go. It's too tight. This beautiful condo in the city usually serves my purposes, but I'm feeling frantic. I can't even safely get on my elevator anymore. I need to have that emotional release of having a bit of land, maybe some water, depending on what I can afford, and somewhere to go. So people have bought based on that. They've also wholesale thought, okay, not just somewhere to go, we're moving there because we're more flexible now. Employers have understood that it's very productive, or can be very productive, to work remotely. So I only have to go to the city, once a week, maybe once a month. So the thinking outside the box has happened there. But there's also, in addition to the emotional side of it, there's a lot of liquidity now. I mean, people have not been able to spend their money on anything. They certainly haven't been spending it on travel. And the government has been putting more and more money into the economy. So there is a lot of liquidity and people looking at somewhere to put their money. So we keep seeing that happening. So the only thing that would keep things in check would be if inflation continues to rise and then gets, there's a really cool term that we used, but I can't see it now. Anyway, hyperinflation, not that cool, but I thought it was good. Hyperinflation, then they would be putting the brakes on and raising interest rates, and then we could see some ramifications of that. But, and I have more to say, but I don't want to just totally take this over. I'll tell you the rest in a minute.
Okay. And that inflation, it is an important factor, right? Because it has been for a long time now reasonable to borrow money. But you look back before then, I remember when looking at a 10% interest rate and saying, oh my God, they're giving money away. Whereas now if folks have extended themselves as far as they had, if the interest rate were to go up that high, that would be a disaster for a lot of people. So you're seeing, what I'm hearing from you is that you're seeing continued growth until 2022 at least. Mm-hmm. Is there any reason to think that say we are coming to a windup of this pandemic. I know we're concerned about a fourth wave, but our vaccination levels are really good. So say we do come out of this pandemic, what happens then? Is it possible that it will deflate somewhat? Do you think there might be a correction next year?
I think there could be a correction, but I don't think it's going to be anything extremely drastic. And in terms of, some of well, not just waterfront, waterfront and residential, it's difficult, the situation that people find themselves in, to be competing for a place to live. So we're hoping that it will level out enough that there won't be such competition on so many properties. In terms of things ever sort of falling apart in value, in Muskoka, Parry Sound, the surrounding area, I can't see it happening. You know, when you look at just the sort of some fun numbers, let's say just the Golden Horseshoe, because I don't know exactly, frankly, how many foreign buyers we have, but it's a minuscule amount compared to from the Golden Horseshoe. So the population of the Golden Horseshoe is approximately 7.826 million. Well, then the 1% that everybody talks about is 78,000. So even out of that 1%, if only half of them bought cottages, or a third of them, or a quarter of them, we're still into the tens of thousands of people looking for property. This year, we had, so far this year, 7,230 residential listings. That's a combination of waterfront and off the water. 1,201 waterfront cottages were for sale. And there are in total approximately 3,000 cottages in Muskoka. So let's say 4,000 in Muskoka and surrounds. Like that, compared to the number of people who are generally looking for property, it's just not going to change. Our supply and demand is firmly on the demand outweighing the supply.
Mm-hmm.
The days on the market are 14, Pamela. That's unheard of. I mean, yes, and Stephanie talking about us not advertising as much. We don't have time to advertise.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you get your ads set up and try to put it in the paper, the place is gone.
And that really brings up a question for our planners. And I know Scott Young at the Conservancy wrote a column for us recently talking about the suburbanization of the lakes. You know, eventually, do we end up seeing condos on the lakes, like large properties, because there is such demand to be on them? And also, when you speak about that multiple bidders, I heard an article on CBC, and it was a realtor, and he was talking about how realtors themselves are asking for some different kind of legislation to come through for that whole blind bidding process, and that particularly during the pandemic, folks they may have lost a few times already on a property. They didn't get it, their bid wasn't high enough, so they're nervous about that, so they bid quite high. He said for himself, in a recent recent real estate deal, the person who won the battle, their bid was $100,000 more than the nearest bid. And the system allows for that whole you can't know what other people are bidding system. What do you think about that system? Is that something that needs to change for equity for buyers?
We don't like it at all, because it reflects, it's very difficult to help people in that situation, and all the more reason to use somebody local who has an intimate knowledge of value and what's happening in the market and value of specific properties. But we don't like that at all. I mean, it's the thought of buyers leaving money on the table is abhorrent to me. But we've tried to have it changed, and so far there's been a lot that sellers had to say about that, because the sellers end up benefiting from that for the most part, because they end up with so much more because people are concerned about that. So they're saying, you know, if we saw, I'll use completely fictitious numbers like 400,000. If we saw that somebody had offered 410 on a $400,000 place, then it might keep it a lot closer, that somebody would offer 411 or 412, like keep it much tighter than the $100,000 that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. And what is the level of government that would change that? Who would change that?
Well, it's AREA and then CREA. So the Ontario Real Estate Association is the first stop.
Interesting. Okay, so let's bring it to the community now. If anyone has a question, maybe raise your hand. I'm going to unmute our telephone caller. If I can find our telephone caller, there you are. Okay. So you are unmuted, telephone caller, in case you have any questions. We just have the one person on telephone. Oh, okay, Brownie. Brownie, what did you want to ask of our experts today? Let me see if you're unmuted. Let's unmute you.
Retired here actually last year from the Allison region, and I really enjoy it. Actually, it's lovely here. But I've been following the market for quite some time. It's not something that I did for a living by any means, but I'm just like to keep up to date what goes on in the market. And I've been following the actual part, particularly the part last, I'm going to say 5 to 8 years in regards to money laundering that trickled into the system in the BC side from the Asian countries.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in the past, for what I've read, the price of homes in BC just drastically went through the roof because so much money was laundered into the real estate system out there. But it would never correct it, even after they caught them and so, well, we think they caught them and slowed them down. And it still hasn't corrected at that point. I mean, it's still taken off. And it just floors me that this went on for years and nobody questioned it. Even the banks took millions and millions of dollars from these Asian people. Like I read an ad in this weekend's National Post that Asian students, like in their late teens, early 20s, were putting millions of dollars down on homes to purchase homes so they could live in BC and go to school.
Mm-hmm.
That makes no sense to me, and it was never reported. But in the meantime, the price of homes inflated crazy, and then whatever took place in BC when they shut it down, it looks like it trickled here into Ontario, big time.
So are we? That's a question.
Tell me I'm right or I'm wrong. Like, what kind of an effect did this actually have?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you guys are in the real estate business. You must have seen this.
Yeah. So locally, do we have a lot of international investment? And do you think there's any kind of criminal element doing that kind of money laundering through our real estate? Have you seen any indication of that at all, Catherine?
I haven't personally. I've had a few Asian clients, and certainly a lot of non-Asian, well-heeled clients, shall we say. As far as money laundering, we are bound by law to identify our clients through either a passport or a driver's license. We have to make sure that it's current and that the person matches with the picture. We have to find out what sort of profession they're in. We need the name of the company that they work for and what their position is in that company, their contact information. and that is submitted to the government. So that by law we have to do, and there are gigantic penalties for not taking care of that. That's not to say that if somebody is not honest, that they're not going to work with mortgage brokers who aren't honest. And and that's in every walk of life. I don't know how you get around that other than that we follow the rules. The programs here are good.
It amazes me. Have you read these stories that I'm talking about that I've read in the last 10 years?
Yep.
And the drive that it's put into the economy and the inflation and the bubble that it actually created.
Mm-hmm.
It's still here. Like, that bubble didn't pop even after they decided to tax these individuals for not living in these homes. The bubble stayed. And it floors me because, I mean, let's be honest, the majority of us know that the kids younger than us, their income levels are not there to support these types of mortgages.
Oh, clearly.
It's just not there. Not from, let's all go back 30 years, 40 years. Yeah, we could make $20 an hour and afford a home and be comfortable. Today's kids, not a chance. Not a chance. So, I mean, and affordable housing, that's just a whole different offshoot from where you want to go with that. Like, when I hear that affordable housing on the news or in the media, I'm asking myself, okay, so where would that be? In the province of Ontario, south of North Bay? Where would affordable housing be? Like, just, it floors me. It really does.
So that brings up an interesting point too. I mean, I know that we've been in a housing crisis, particularly in the Huntsville area. We've been in a housing crisis for at least a decade now. We have huge lineups for housing, and I don't see how people who couldn't buy a home 2 years ago could possibly buy a home now. And we have a lot of local people. I know a lot of my friends have sold their homes, and they're leaving, and that's where they're heading, is north. So I think that might be driving our Almaguin real estate market as well, that people are selling in Muskoka. I'm getting nods from both Catherine and Stephanie, that people are selling in Muskoka and moving further north. Are we, and I know that this is not necessarily your area of expertise, but are we becoming unaffordable as a region for the average working person?
We definitely are, but I don't think it's just becoming that. I think this has been a problem for a very long time. I know when I was on the board of the Muskoka Lakes Association, there was a lot of talk about how can people possibly, how can cottagers, wealthy cottagers, expect to come to an area and have any sort of services if the people providing the services aren't being paid properly, and these aren't necessarily exactly linked, but they are, paid properly and housed, a place to find housing. Even rentals are not available for people. So I think it's a huge ongoing problem, but nothing new.
We had even our Almaguin reporter, so the person who owned his home owned two homes. I think it's a common story now. She owned two homes, rented one. The real estate went, bubbled up. And so she sold the one and moved into the one that she was renting, which left him looking for a place to live and unable to find one. They've left, and it was him and a spouse who both had full-time incomes, and they couldn't afford anything in our rental market, of the very few things that they could find. So I'm curious, and it will be something to watch in the coming years, how we change as a society, because our traditional Muskoka people being priced out of the market, moving further north, moving to other communities, and being supplanted by GTA folks, or I guess Golden Horseshoe folks, who find that they can work at home. So they're bringing jobs with them. They're coming here. They're keeping their job. They're not looking for jobs. They're not going to be working in the service industry, which, you know, we know in our area, you've got the construction industry and the service industry, and those are our industries. Maybe they even bring jobs with them. So how does that change Parry Sound, Muskoka, and a positive change, negative change? Always hate to see, you know, gentrification and folks pushed out of an area, but it does seem that that's happening. So Catherine, do you know, or staff, do you know, where are people moving? If I've sold my house in Muskoka because I can now get, you know, $600 for an off the water in town family home, so I sell, I cash out. Where are these folks going?
So I've had a couple friends actually move to the East Coast recently. They sold property here in Bracebridge, and one even sold their business and up and moved to the East Coast because that's where they could afford. I've heard of some people going north of North Bay. My in-laws, actually, they sold their property in Mississauga. They desperately wanted to move to Muskoka to be closer to my husband and my children and I. And they ended up in Sault Ste. Marie because that's where they could afford.
Mm-hmm.
The property on the water, they wanted, not only did they want on the water, but they wanted acreage, and they just couldn't find that in Muskoka because it was too high priced. So they just kept going north until they found what they wanted. I know even myself, my husband and I were looking at potentially selling our property, and we can't find anything within our price range here residentially anyways. So we're looking Almaguin and north because that's what we have to do. I don't want to go south because, you know, it gets more expensive and whatnot there. So yeah, from what I have seen personally, it's East Coast and much farther north.
And that's causing a bubble in the East.
Yeah.
Catherine, what are you seeing?
Excuse me. Basically the same thing. And I do a lot of I handle a lot of waterfront property. And I've had people who have waterfront wanting to move further north because of all the people coming that they moved. Muskoka and Parry Sound because they wanted to get away from everybody, and now everybody's come with them, so they want to go even further north. That's
So
I have a question.
Oh, yes. What is your question?
Hi. I was wondering, Catherine, about, I assumed that once COVID got under control and everyone was vaccinated, that the push to move further north because they couldn't travel would switch over, and then all of a sudden people would start traveling again and thought, oh, we don't need that cottage because we want to travel. So I was wondering if that was a future trend that you saw. And the other thing, you mentioned it about condos on the lake to address some of the demand. And in Gravenhurst, we're seeing that there's something proposed right near the steamships, just in behind the ticket office, for that little piece of property. It's like a large, tall, 7-story kind of condo building. I just wondered if you could go elaborate a bit on that trend as well.
Well, I know that there have been many attempts to put condo buildings on the water, and I know for one, the Lakes Association is really active in making sure that they have planners on their board and making sure that the rules are followed and that things aren't overdeveloped. Because let's face it, if we lose our water quality, then there's that has a huge impact on everyone, not just health-wise, but financially as well, obviously. So And about the, I agree that I thought too that we would start to see things slowing down a little more by now with things being freed up. Although I'm not sure that people are really getting that feeling that they're free to do what they want to do because of the concerns about the Delta variant. I think that's coming. I don't think it's going to be a major game changer. I think it will be just even things out from a bit less of a frantic pace.
Oh, okay.
Does that answer your question well?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Okay, so does anybody, do we have, Brownie has another question? Okay, let's get
Brownie,
back.
I lived in Alliston once. I just want to tell you that before.
I have to say too, I live in Port Sydney and I have new neighbors who have moved here from Alliston as well.
Interesting.
Okay, I just wanted to mention the fact that when she spoke about the resort that they're going to build there in town here, I read in the paper and I saw the diagram on it. I actually took a walk down there and took a look around in that Cherokee Lane, and looks like they're going to go right up that hillside. But in regards to stopping the growth, like I said, I just left Allison after 20 years. I raised my daughter down there, and I'm originally from Newfoundland. I moved
From the
I moved
east.
there from Newfoundland in 1990, and I worked at Honda for 30 years. And anyways, my story is what it is. But I've seen Alliston. Okay, the town of Alliston was just like the town of Ravenhurst is right now 30 years ago. It was small. It was quiet. Nobody jogged. There was no joggers on the road.
That's true.
Quiet, small little quiet town. Okay, and about 10 years after I was there, a jogger showed up. I said to my wife, change is coming to Alliston. And sure enough, it took off overnight. Within the last 15 years, Alliston's population has probably tripled. So again, I moved here because it's a nice, quiet town. But when I came up the highway, my daughter moved to Aurelia, and I saw Aurelia's growth and Barry's growth. I'm afraid to say it, but I don't think you're going to stop them from coming up the highway. It's something you're going to have to get severely used to. And I was actually shocked at how many young families are here in Gravenhurst walking small children and babies. And I think it's fabulous. And I guess there is one builder here building some homes. But in regards to stopping the growth coming up the highway, it's not going to happen, I'm afraid. I've seen it for the last 30 years. Like I said, I moved here from Newfoundland, and the growth has just been incredible. Do we manage it properly? That's the key.
Yeah.
The key is managing it properly and not creating that suburbia where everybody's in on top of one another. That's the key point. That's the part I didn't like about Allison. They jammed the houses in one at a time. They didn't even put any parks into the subdivisions for families that take their kids to go to a park. It was all just about housing. So in regards to stopping it, personally, it's not going to happen. I can't see it, but we can manage it right. From a council perspective, who issued the licenses or whichever, manage it properly, lay it out properly, and the town can still look super fabulous, have that small town feeling. Trust me.
And densification is something that in terms of our towns, we have heard over and over again that that's going to be a solution to a lot of our problems. We're able to offer more services if we have a more dense urban centers. So we'll see, because it is surely happening. When I moved here, we moved from Toronto to Kitchener-Waterloo and thought way too much urban sprawl here for us. Where might it be slower? And we thought the Canadian Shield, it's harder to build. You can't just level a farmland and put up a whole subdivision. You have to build one at a time. And while we were the first house on our street when we moved here, and now there's 7 more, it's 7 more. It's not 3 subdivisions. So I do think just the very geography is going to slow it down a bit, but it won't stop it. I have to agree. We're too attractive a place to be folks will continue to come here. So we're about 10 minutes out. Anyone who has not asked a question, do you have anything? And seeing anybody who has not asked a question yet. Okay, so I do have a few other questions of my own before we end up. So are you able to compare our three markets? Catherine, with the Realtor Association, you guys do Muskoka, Parry Sound. Do you also cover Almaguin?
Yes, but it's not divided out. So it's the Lakelands Association of Realtors is Muskoka, Parry Sound, Haliburton, Aurelia, and is about to become in the fall, it'll be Georgian Bay as well, that area that's part of Muskoka.
So how would you compare them?
Certainly Muskoka, in terms of new listings, I just grabbed some stats for you. 292 new listings in July, so that was down 8.2%, which is no surprise because July is getting late in the season to list, and then again in August it starts to pick up again for fall. The dollar volume is $208,769,171. So that's down about 31%. So no surprise there. But the average sales price, and here's the problem. The average sales price is $1,093.32. Now we have to take all this with a grain of salt because, as always, we know the area is large, but the actual number of sales is quite small. So statistics are always somewhat skewed. But the average sales price is up 16.7%. So they continue to rise with all this competition. Now, in comparison, Parry Sound, new listings, 165. Dollar volume, $98,650,066. And the average sales price is $720,073. And that's up 19.6%. I was kind of surprised that Parry Sound is up a little higher. But I tried to divide it out for you. I even made it a couple of phone calls about it, Pamela. Can't get Almaguin out. And it was frustrating because the association divides Parry Sound into like 8 different subsets, but Almaguin wasn't one of them. But I did talk to Chuck, this year's president, who is in Parry Sound, and he said that overall, Almaguin is always slightly less than the rest of Parry Sound because it's so rural, and so people tend to, even though they want to have some space, they tend to want to be by a bit of a center, and it's further from town. Not to say that there isn't many of them there, but it's just not quite as fast as everywhere else.
Right. So there's still, if you're in Muskoka and you're selling your property, Parry Sound and Almaguin are still good options.
Yes.
What do I need to know?
Goodish. They're all expensive. They're all lovely lakes. I mean, it's it's all good. All good or all bad, depending on how you look at it. I choose to look at it as all good.
As all good.
Yes.
Well, I know that in preparing for this, I talked to a number of realtors and invited them on the call, and they're all way too busy. They're just so busy. It is a huge time, I think, for folks in this area.
Yes, well, I have two competing offers going on right now, and two lists to get going on. So yes, I know the feeling. Although I did make time for you.
Has there, and I appreciate that. Has there been, along with this boom, are a bunch of people wanting to get into your business? Are you seeing a lot of new realtors? in
I
the
just
area?
welcomed a new realtor to Royal LePage this morning. She's just started in Gravenhurst. So, yes, I've noticed that there are some younger realtors coming in, which is nice,
Right.
so that everybody doesn't retire out of the business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are you, as Steph said earlier, are you seeing a lot of folks, a lot of realtors, Toronto realtors, Golden Horseshoe realtors, operating now in our area?
Yes, that's a bane to our existence. It's it's a problem because I think it drives up prices because they don't know. And just, my broker gave me an example of something silly, but it shows how much they don't know the area. A buyer called, who is represented by a Toronto agent on one of our listings, called after closing and said, where's my cable hookup? Like, cable hookup? They don't know about septic systems. They don't know, as Stephanie was saying, about shore road allowances. They don't know the different neighborhoods. They don't have the background to know what, property seems, oh, well, that's a great price. Compared to what? I mean, we're not in a vacuum here. Our job is to make sure that our clients know values and know all the details that they could be running into down the road.
Okay, so we've got 4 minutes to wind up. Steph, in 2 minutes, how would you wind this up? How about Steph's crystal ball? What's the future hold?
Oh, what does the future hold? So, in talking, I talk to realtors every day, so I don't think we're going to see from what I've heard, I don't think we're going to see a slowdown for a little bit. A couple of realtors have actually said they don't foresee a slowdown until at least 2025. If that's the case, fantastic. If it's not the case, we'll soon find out. I do foresee more and more coming up from the south into Muskoka. I would love to see more people from outside of Muskoka using the local agents, and so getting more agents to get their name out there is the whole goal for me. So it would be, that's kind of where I sit there. I foresee us still being strong for a little bit, for a good little bit.
And I'm thinking as we talk about this, like a later town hall could be with municipalities, talking about what is their plan to house the people who are being, who aren't going to be able to afford to buy houses. Are they going to plan for denser urban centers, where we see apartment buildings so many people can live there? I wonder, that would be a good discussion. Catherine, what is the future? What does your crystal ball tell us?
Well, I say by 2022, we'll be seeing some change. I don't think anything really, really drastic pretty much ever. I think Brownie's right that people are going to keep coming north, and that's been seen all over the world. It's not unique to our area. I think it's important to be involved in the community and make sure that we do have some good planning going on, so that certainly encouraging condominiums and apartment buildings off the water, I think is not a bad idea at all. And Stephanie, I'm going to call you because I think your idea about local realtors making themselves known is a great one. So thanks for that.
Okay. To everyone, our topic of conversation is going to be the opioid crisis. It's a crisis that is plaguing our entire country, the world, and locally we have some real issues. So we're going to talk about those next Thursday at noon.